by me and never stop fighting.
It very much goes without saying that Cyberpunk 2077 is a memento mori conveyed in the form of a crime/spy/political thriller. While it is as loud and slick and edgy a video game story as you're likely to see, every hour spent within its gilded streets and bright lights further solidifies the feeling that this story is deeply, deeply sentimental and driven by immense pathos. With every sign of life mirrored by a hint of death and every bit of joy tinged with sorrow, Night City is paradox given form through its visual and emotional language in the most honest way, filled with flesh and blood characters all coalescing and forming this narrative mosaic about life and death and dreams. However, life is a vague theme at best, and my idea of where the story was going to land in terms of messaging was constantly in flux right up until the end. And it all finally clicked for me upon watching all of the endings for the base game's story. Now, when it comes to this game, I don't tend to prescribe to the idea that there is any one true ending. Personally, I think that every single ending here is additive and roughly as significant as the next in one way or another, so I don't believe that any one of them is the objectively pristine vehicle for Cyberpunk's messages. However, I do think that when it comes to prizing them out, the most defining one for me is what I consider to be the bad one. The Devil Route, where you help Takemura avenge Sabuto and choose to sign the contract to be locked away as an engram, hoping to be transferred into a body in the future. I feel like this one offers clarity, not through showing you what the story is saying you should do, but through showing you what you should not do. And for me, everything fell in line after that. Now the thing is, prior to this I was so hung up about whether the story was advocating for living a short life as a legend, dying in a blaze of glory, or living a quieter, longer life as a face in the crowd. Where is the line? At what point is the quiet life antithetical? At what point is the short life a waste? Is the blaze of glory really the universal answer here? But in the end, I think Johnny spells it out.
Not asking you to never give up. Sometimes, you gotta let go. Just don't let anyone change who you are, okay?
At the end of the day, it's okay to give up, or change your mind, or run away, or die with reckless abandon, or go loud, or go quiet, or try to live long, or try to live short. This story is not telling us how to live, because no one knows how they should live their life better than themselves. Instead, it is telling us how not to live. Cyberpunk 2077 is telling us not to live in a way disloyal to your principles, or your core, fundamental sense of self. Of course, there are lots of themes and messages presented throughout this story, Edgerunners, and Phantom Liberty, but to me, this is the primary one. An examination and celebration of life, specifically living properly, and an unflinching rumination on how death fits into that. Judy, Takemura, Panam. We meet others and our paths cross and collide and sometimes rebound, but these characters live true to who they are, unapologetically. David Martinez lived a life of anxiety bereft of fulfillment, emulating those who passed the torch to him without living for himself, until he realized that living in his own way, sacrificing himself so that Lucy could achieve her dream in a world that would never promise that, would be enough. The purpose of his life was to protect that dream, just like his mother before him. One could say that this isn't a fair existence and that there is an element of settling here, and that's true, but in a world like this, these people found that this was more than they could have asked for, and they were happy. That was their decision, and no one can tell them that they're wrong for that. Now, Solomon Reed is almost an antithesis to this because his complex psychology trapped him in a position wherein his binding sense of duty didn't allow him to ever properly see clearly without regrets until the end, with the only ending where he properly embodies this theme being the one where V lets Songbird die, as V brute forces Reed into understanding the right path here, that his clouded eyes couldn't see despite his heart knowing. but otherwise as a character whose premise is fundamentally based in his inability to wholly parse out his heart's true desires due to psychological elements such as regret and a misguided duty, one who tries his best to satisfy that heart through pursuing conflicting methods hoping for a harmonious end. Reed opposes this idea overall, and the fact that he is left forlorn and unfulfilled the majority of the time as a result of that is telling. And Songbird. She was someone like us, a reflection of our truest essence who was never given a proper chance to try to live on her own terms. It's not that she either followed her heart or compromised herself, it's that she never even had the opportunity to make that choice. And helping her to do so, whether it be through killing her or sending her off to the moon, is her salvation. However, the game doesn't judge you for doing otherwise, as it is a very gray and nuanced decision that directly impacts the way in which we follow our heart. As much as sending Song off to the moon in the hopes of some distant salvation feels right and in line with the themes of the story here, it is entirely understandable to not be able to get over her self-serving betrayals. Whatever decision you make in Phantom Liberty is wholly yours, and whether you're pleased with the outcome or not, whether you regret things or not, that is something V has to live with, and that is part of our life path. Jackie's life was cut tragically short, and there's definitely the possibility that he had regrets with his reckless approach, wondering where he could have been more careful to change something and even spend just a little bit more time with Misty and his mom and V. But everyone lives, and everyone dies. Life has an expiration date, and life is a series of entropic reactions, fortunate and unfortunate, that result in differing lives for differing people. And the question that Cyberpunk is asking is not about the length of that life, but rather, are you proud of your life and how you lived? And I think Jackie was. I think with all said and done, he could hold his head high in spite of the tragedy and say that he lived in service of who he was at his core. And there's Johnny. Johnny started out as an asshole, but as he was exposed to V and learned through them, he realized why he was always so angry, why he felt so bottomlessly rageful, and why he was a black hole of bitterness. Because while he lived in service of a cause he truly believed in, he died unfulfilled. He missed the forest for the trees and wasn't able to properly value those close to him. But he slowly softens as he is given a second chance for a lot of this through V. A second chance at tying up the relationships he undercut, and a life-affirming friendship through V. And with that second chance, he was fulfilled, and willing to take on all of hell itself, feeling lucky to be given the chance to do so. In Night City, some die with regrets and some with none. Some lose themselves and a few find themselves. But it is incredibly rare for anyone to be given a second chance to change their goodbye to the world. And Johnny appreciated that more than words could say.
Can't help wondering if I can still call myself your friend.
Of course you can. God my blessing.
Now, I'm not saying that Johnny is the sole proxy for the story's advocations and messages, but he sort of acts like one when it comes to the endings, including the Phantom Liberty ones, and how they coalesce into the take-home point here. While he does grumble a bit, Johnny is thoroughly happy for V in almost every ending. Whether V helps Songbird or Reed, whether they got help from Panam, whether Johnny does it himself with Rogue, whether they stormed Arasaka's front door, whether they decided to end it on that rooftop on their own terms, or even whether they found a cure and wanted a shot at a long and new life. No matter what, Johnny is proud and happy for V, any which way. Except in one specific case. The thing here is that V is not a pure blank slate for the player to impose their will upon. V is canonically a character with agency and individuality, and while there is flexibility with regards to their actions and behaviors, there is a range of views and actions that are in character, and some that are not. And so the problem with the Arasaka ending is that in it, V clings to a life not worth living by their specific worldview through a method that antithesized what they stood for on a fundamental level. We strengthen and help a self-serving, destructive tyrant in Saburo Arasaka restore himself to power while eliminating the chance for the truest change the world at large would have experienced for decades and decades. All to survive. V likes Takemura, but working with Arasaka undercuts their cause and philosophies, even more so when we see that Yorinobu's motives were not all that far removed from ideals that we would hold close at heart. And that's why Johnny is so utterly disappointed with V here. Now, one might assume that given the type of person he is, Johnny would only be happy if V went out in a blaze of glory or maybe allowed him and Rogue to do so. But in actuality, he doesn't really care, as long as V is V, and as long as V is happy, or at least satisfied and living in the way that Johnny knows that they want to live. It's where they betray what they stood for that Johnny sees a problem and is sad for V, partly because it's like looking into a mirror reflecting his own past mistakes, though in a much different way, of course.
What choice did I have?
Stay true to yourself? Give a thought to a tiny concept called loyalty?
If you're all paranoid about being thrown in another Arasaka prison, don't be. They're gonna shred you.
You're never gonna get it. It's not about Arasaka. Not even about life and death.
Then what's it all about, Johnny? Enlighten me.
The principle, V. It's always about the principle. Swap meat for chrome, live a BD fantasy, whatever. But at the end of it all, it's the code you live by that defines who you are. Ever get lost? It shows you the way home. Bust up into pieces, it puts you back together again.
That rocker boy Silverhand's credo? Words he lived by?
Something Johnny picked up from V. The old V.
Cyberpunk 2077 isn't arrogant enough to say that any given outcome is the singular way to live. It's saying that no one has more of a right to dictate how you should live than you. We all die, so we should live in a way that honestly reflects us. Long or short, loud or quiet, it matters not. And I think this is symbolized by the bullet necklace given to V early in the game, after their somewhat miraculous survival in the aftermath of the Konpeki Plaza heist. It started out as a symbol of hope and encouragement, and it was. Fueled by Misty's words, it was genuine inspiration. But once we reached the decisive moment of our life and death, once our situation transitioned from finding the perseverance within us to try to survive to fully understanding the choices we had at the end of this time given to us, the necklace began to represent holding on to this foolishly idealized version of a life that doesn't exist for the sake of living. Survival at any cost, with no basis in reality and no loyalty to the principles we held. And so tossing it, like we do in most of the endings, letting go of these inhibitions and embracing whatever direction you want to go in is the path forward. Not holding on to it for some feeble semblance of an empty life for longevity's sake. Like I said in the beginning, my take-home message with Cyberpunk is that it is a memento mori, a lamentation and celebration of all that life is, where the little moments of people being able to forget their misery speak so loudly because they echo the most fervent, fundamental desires of their heart, and as such, they echo the most raw, pure beauty that V is trying to seek this whole time. From survival at any cost to properly living. The distinction may seem blurred, but it is truly as wide and significant as the paradoxical Night City skyline. It promises dreams and is forthright about rarely ever fulfilling them, but people flock to it like moths to a flame anyway. For a happy ending, this is the wrong city with the wrong people. But for an existence of meaning, life finds a way. Anywhere, anyway, somehow. Many thanks for watching.
Good night, Valerie. Today was a good day.